Buying property is not just about making moolah. It's about a much more important venture. Hi, I'm Joe Kraus.
And I'm Sam Powell, and this is part 2 of our how to buy and invest property for beginners, zero to hero strategy. So if you're finding this now, jump into part 1 and then come back to this one. But we're rounding off this part of the, part 2 is looking in further into who's going to be on your team for financial success when it comes to investing in property. And we touched on a few key players at the start. But in this episode, we jump into the importance of your building and pest inspectors, your conveyancers, solicitors, as well as your quantity surveyors and property managers to really help, amplify the return on investment from going down this path, which is definitely fraught with a lot of misinformation in the industry. So hopefully you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, we just emphasize on like how many mistakes you can make by not having the right professionals on your team and how much it can cost you. I also asked Sam a great question in part 2 on what would he actually do differently starting again, and he has a really good story on how you can save a lot of money and how he could have saved a lot of money, but only in hindsight he knew this. But so learn from his mistakes, and I've also got many mistakes in myself as well. We also talk about book recommendations. I recommend 2 books. Sam recommends 2 books, and we talk about that leads us into the journey of talking about like what role your partner plays in your wealth journey, even if they're not actively building the wealth and it's just you, and how important it is to bring your partner into it and how you can do that. We also do discuss this whole wealth journey is not just about money and what you should be truly doing this for, not just focusing on the dollar bills and getting taken away from what's far, far more important in life than just money. And it's helping you, I guess, really have a good foundation of what goal to actually look for, talking about the vehicle versus the destination. So this is such a great pod. Episode 1 is a banger. Episode 2 is a banger. Before we finish this off and we get into the episode number 2, part 2, I should say, make sure you don't forget that you can get our How to Maximize Borrowing Capacity mini course from our website, propertypals.au/resources. It's going to help you buy a larger asset, more quality asset, by understanding how to get far more money from the banks. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jared, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional.
There's different vehicles too. Like this is even, and join us in that journey of Property Pals, Jared Kraus, Sam Powell, because like I'm just constantly looking for different edges and to get you to that financial freedom. Like there's alternative investing strategies, like commercial property, or even going down, finding developer finance. But there's a lot of risks around all that, and that's why we don't cover that. But join us as we evolve.
Yeah. We're basically helping you guys get into residential and then graduate out of residential, and then you can choose your own path from there, because we think playing in residential to start off with and then move into commercial, it's like we've opened the door for you. We like to open the door for you residential, get you into the property market, and then open another door, and that second door we open is it's a whole new playing field.
It's a whole new
Yeah. And so I guess when starting with residential property, we've talked about team now with you need a mortgage broker, you need an accountant, and I would say for anybody going to buy a property for their first property is you do need a buyer's agent. It doesn't need to be somebody that we recommend, but you should get somebody that you trust to buy you a property. Even if you've done 5 years of courses and training like me, I think you're just going to make a better financial decision by paying whatever the fee is for a good buyer's agent, because they're going to save you. They're going to save you money typically, and they're typically going to buy you a better asset. So there's those three. What else do we need in terms of team, Sam?
Yeah,
And should we take it as a linear
I'm going
approach as
to
well?
jump in and throw a few more things on there.
Okay.
A big part of what we do too is like jump on the website. We've got www.propertypals.au/coaching, and let's just have a session. There's a few quick questions that you answer, and that lead you to booking in a time, and we can point you in those directions. And for some people, we're advocates of buyers agents. We also help people find the right buyers agents for them. And if you want to do it all yourself, by all means, but at least have a chat to a few different people in that buyers agent space, because the industry is interesting in that sense. People start out with the best intentions, they get big, they lose quality, and then sort of get stuck in working with the wrong people. And it's constantly evolving. And I know this because I've been involved in the industry for a number of years and helped grow a number of different buyers agency businesses. So
sometimes there's a top buyer's agent, and then another one will come and just trump it, and then
or the top one who has all the marketing, you see them everywhere, is actually the worst on the delivery side. Just like with every business.
So as scalability increases, the ball drops in other areas.
I guess our sort of like verified method of finding the right people for people's right goals in property is a big part of what we do. But that's my little 2 cents on that front. But once you've got your team is important. So as you said, you've got your goal in place, you've got your mortgage broker, your accountant on board, your understanding. You're now working with a good quality buyer's agent who has given you the frameworks around what it is that we're hunting for. Or you've done the work yourself and done courses, and you've evolved and spent that last however many months figuring that out. And then you're going shopping.
You're going shopping for the property with your agent.
That's great. In answer to your question, which was like, who else is in the team?
Once you've found your property, then there's a few people to add after that.
Yes, because you're going shopping and you found the asset. You have roughly an idea of what you're looking for at this stage. And then when the right one comes along, that's this is where the rubber meets the road in that sense, is that it becomes real, because you're doing it's all education up until this point. The only money you would have spent would have been either a deposit on a buyer's agent fee or the education that you would have paid for up to this point, which might be either a couple $100,000 or up to $8,000 in just a course on how to do this process. So you haven't dumped that $500,000, which is a lot of money, into the process. What I find is a lot of people they tend to get stuck in this next phase, which is the analysis paralysis that I constantly harp on about, which is one of the biggest killers to people's
analysis paralysis. So it's paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
On what though? Like why do they get paralyzed by analyzing what?
Well, you're educated, but you're educated to a point where you know a little, but the issue is that you're just constantly, it's like that shiny ball syndrome, or the dangling carrot. You're always like, you see a good asset and you're like, oh, that's great. All right, well, I only want a bargain, so I know this is worth $500,000, but this is my first investment. I need to get this for $450,000, and then you miss out. Or you're going, I want a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double lockup, modern build. Yes, I've seen it. It comes up once every 6 months. However, you're not factoring into account that suburb might have grown. Like, there's so many different variables once you're in that hunting phase that you kind of are like convincing yourself not to pull that trigger. But if you've got the underlying fundamentals of what makes a good asset, that's why for me, I do it every day. It's more of a transaction, and you're buying the land really at the end of the day, and the income stream that comes out of that house.
Yeah.
You also just want to factor in maintenance. You don't want a high maintenance block, but they're kind of like your 3 key things. And like, even you might even find that perfect property. You're frothing for it. You got it for a bargain, but like, don't trust people that say trust me, but if you're getting something for an absolute bargain in a really strong growth location, you've done all the research that I do to get to the point to actually give the confidence to pull the trigger, and you're getting an absolute ripper of a deal, I just go, why is someone selling this to you at this $50,000 below your perceived market value? Either your analysis is off and you're too high, or there's an issue that you haven't come across with that property. So just this is kind of buyer beware on that front.
Yeah, I think that's that's a mindset issue that people can have. I don't mean to be too harsh if you have this and be blunt. I've definitely had it and have had it and have struggled with it in the past. Is that trying to get things for cheap, and I've learnt the hard way by buying cheap things, and I just buy more. I just buy quality, and I'm prepared to pay a higher price for something that's more quality. And this is what I tell people when they're buying a business as well. If you're trying to buy businesses very much under market value, then you're going to buy a cheap business, or you're going to buy a cheap property. I'd rather pay a little bit over market value for something that's absolutely quality, knowing that it's going to surpass what I paid for it anyway, versus trying to hunt a bargain. And this is where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, is because it's a mindset issue where the rich people understand, I'm going to buy quality because it's going to get me results and it's going to last longer and it's going to do the job right, versus then buying a $20 t-shirt that lasts you a month after 3 washes, versus buying a $150 t-shirt or whatever that's going to last you, fit you really well, look really good, it's going to get the job done, and it's going to last a longer period of time. Yeah, it's not. If you're becoming an investor, let's spend our money on quality.
Yeah, well, they say you got to hold it for 10 plus years as well. So, like, we talked about that in the previous pod as well. But it was like, for me personally, and mine's more of a 6+ year time frame. But obviously, tracking the market as well is important too. For me, I'm a bit more of an active investor because I do it every day. But for most people, they're more of that passive 6-10+ year time frame to let time do the heavy lifting.
Yeah. So that's a good thing for beginners to know, is understand that, like, once if you buy a property with a buyer's agent that buys you the right growth property, if it's a foundational property in your portfolio, which is where you're probably at as a listener, is you're typically going to get the most growth in the first few years that you purchase it. After maybe year 4 to 6, or 6 to longer, you might not grow as much, and that's when you need to look at your opportunity cost of holding that versus how much value you have there, and then what sort of amount of money is that, and then where would you go away if you were to reinvest it somewhere else? What would be the opportunity cost of holding that asset? That opens up a can of worms that we won't go into. And I want to bring us back to the team. So you buy your first residential property.
Yeah, you go shopping. Fantastic. The property that you are hunting for, you've come across it. Like, amazing. It's this banger, 3-bed, 1-bath, low set brick on a 600 square meter block of dirt. Fantastic. That's your must-haves in a growth location, well built out. That's sort of like the basic fundamentals of what you should be looking for on that front. But then it's like, okay, cool. Now you do your analysis, or your buyer's agent.
You check the buyer's agent's DD.
Yep, and that's the key point. If you are going on the buyer's agent path, like, obviously it's your money. Don't outsource everything, but have an understanding. Jump on realestate.com, check out the sold sections, both the rentals and the sold and the on the markets. But once you've got that confidence to pull that trigger at that figure, and you start negotiations, and then you secure that property, then we start evolving into the next phase of your team.
Yeah, and I like to think about, where am I once if I'm going to use a buyer's agent. Obviously, once you purchase the property, you need a conveyancer or solicitor, and you need building and pest check. Before I purchase the property, or before I make an offer, typically I want to know who my building and pest check is, the person, and I typically going to know who my conveyancer is. And that's going to be based on typically the area that I'm purchasing in, or the state. I have used, was it Law Lab? They're online. They're pretty good for conveyancers. And then building and pest is going to be somebody that's, can be a international one, but, a national one. Yeah.
Well, you can
or you can just go local.
Yeah. The main thing is that they're qualified, like, builders, in my point.
Go for people that have good reviews. Do your due diligence on them as well. And so yeah, you're gonna purchase the property, and then you're gonna speak to your conveyancer and get your building and pest check done. And and then once you have that done and you've settled on a deal, well, before settlement, you're going to work out who's my property manager going to be.
Yeah, well, that sort of goes into I like going
if
deeper.
you want a property manager. Yeah, let's go deeper.
Understanding why you're doing this, right? Like we're talking about 101 here. So the reason why you want to get in contact with your building and pest inspector is if you're obviously in negotiations with this property, you haven't secured it yet, but it's looking quite promising. You want to be, you're going to need to organise a building and pest inspection. And if you want to make your offer as strong as possible, obviously from the seller's perspective, you can have the least amount of conditions as possible. If you can do your building and pest before signing the contract, so you don't need that condition, you will spend that money up front, and it's not a guarantee you'll secure the property. But from a seller's perspective, if you've got two offers on the table, one's at 500,000, one's at 510. One is conditioned to a building and pests and finance. One's just finance. Yeah, I've definitely done deals where my offer's been accepted because it doesn't have a building and pest or a finance clause because there's less barriers, and they'll take the lower price for the guaranteed result. That does happen. And then the conveyancing side of things is it's important to have that conveyancer. Like if you're working with a professional, obviously they'll introduce that to your psyche, at the front of the process. So your professionals that are surrounding you, your team, they know what you're doing. So it's not like you just, can you imagine what you're doing in your profession right now? Someone calls you and says, oh, hey, Jane, I've just bought a property and I need you to do the, conveyancing on it, within the next 24 hours before I sign the contract. And they're just like, I haven't heard from you. I have no idea what you were doing. And now you want me to drop everything that I've just been working on in my life just for you. Like, give me a little bit of heads up is kind of what I'm trying to say. So it's not a cold conversation, and then they're happy to work alongside you as best as possible. And that's why we say, do it up front, get sure they're aware of the process, what state you're buying in. Obviously, there's nationwide conveyancing businesses, but each state is different with their rules and regs.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you get into the negotiation piece of like, it's going to help me sort of like get the deal across the line for a good deal with the building and pest check done prior. I love that. And so once you
can also negotiate on what you find in the building and pest inspection.
Yes,
so you might,
that's a good idea.
Whereas this is negotiations speak, but you can, like, from a buyer's perspective, a lot of the sellers, say you've got something on the contract that's subject to a building and pest report, you've committed the money, you've committed that whole process up until then. If you get a building and pest report that's not as not amazing, there's a few issues with the property, and you still want to proceed with the property, and the agent knows that there's a few little cracks in the plaster, but structurally it's completely fine. Yes, there's a few cracked tiles, not a big issue. This person, it's a bit of the poker game where the agent's going, you're not going to back out on this. I know you're asking for $10,000 off the contract price, but I don't think you're going to do it. And then if you've done that before signing the contract, you can kind of bag the property as much as you can to get them down on price.
You use that building and pest check as leverage.
Yeah, it's a tool to negotiate with. And it's harder to do if it's subject to a building, pest and finance. Like, don't get me wrong,
you're very price signed.
Yeah, and like don't get me wrong. Like I do it all the time as well. On both fronts. It's just from looking at it historically, if like in Sydney as an example, in New South Wales, they are more open to doing the unconditional offers. So they're getting their pre-finance approved. They can go and put their offers in. They do the building and pests before doing the negotiation. So they can just basically go in an unconditional offer, and that's the norm. Whereas in Queensland, it's like opposite.
See, what I like about this is maybe it's not to do for your first investment, but maybe it's your second residential investment to have the building and pest check done first before making an offer. Is that psychologically, what happens for the broker and the seller is that they see you now as a professional. You've done this before, and when you put an offer for, they're like, okay, that's a good offer. You're gonna buy more trust by setting yourself up with the perceived look of being a professional investor, even if it's your first or second property. And that, I think that gives you such a good psychological edge in terms of negotiations.
Yeah, the risk is that you don't get the property and you waste $600 on a building and pest report, and multiple times it starts to hurt. So I fully get both aspects, and each negotiation and each property is different. So it depends on the market you're buying in. Like I'd push it for certain markets if it's an owner occupier and not a very high demand area, but it's like an emotional buy.
Yeah.
Then doing those building and pest checks prior to negotiations can really help. But and the chances of you securing the property are much greater. Whereas if you're in a really highly competitive market, it's growing, your budget. If you're sitting going I've had clients say I've got $2.5 million, and I'm like, oh, I can see value up to 2.6 on this property. So you may miss out, but it's definitely worthwhile throwing a hat in the ring and trying. Putting that unconditional offer, spending that $600 on a building and pest report, you might be able to secure for $2.5 million, and they take your offer, which might be below what someone else is willing to pay, but they're subject to a building and pests and a finance clause. So I hope that makes sense.
It does make perfect sense. Once you've got your building and pest check done, conveyances, solicitors, all that work done, and you've signed the documents, and then if you're going to be quite passive in your portfolio, which I suggest not managing the property yourself if you want to grow, is getting a property manager. We don't need to go too much into a property manager. Obviously, like we said before, go with somebody that's quality. If you want recommendations, we can help you with that as well. Reach out to us. But go with somebody. Don't pay a smaller percentage fee just because it's going to be cheaper and put more money in your pocket. You're probably going to end up doing the property management yourself and still paying a property manager at the same time if you're going to go for cheap. I like to pay people to get everything sorted. Not need to email me minimal amount of times and say, here's your money. Thanks for the good year, and wish you another good year ahead. That's what I like to see from my property managers. And then to add to your team, a little cherry on top is a quantity surveyor that can help you. We talked to Mike Mortlock. Listen to that podcast episode.
31, I think.
Yes, and he's a gun. And
he's director of MCG Quantity Surveyors,
and his property podcast you should check out as well.
Yeah, Gear for Growth.
Gear for Growth.
It's all about sharing the love, and he's a great man to know. But I definitely learnt a lot from Mike. He's got these 3 key pillars of when to use a quantity surveyor. I told Jared that there's times where it might not be worth it, but I guess the underlying fundamentals are, if you're unsure, like what did you say? Probably 95% of the time, it would be worthwhile using a quantity surveyor for your investment property.
Yeah.
But they won't take on the job if they can't give you the value back. So your fee will be say anywhere between $5 to $1,000. They want to guarantee that they can actually get you that back.
And they'll give you a free assessment first before they start working with them. So quantity survey is great. Now I've got a couple of other things that I want to bring up and chat about as well. And I'm going to dangle a carrot for you guys. I got some books that I want to recommend that every single property investor or somebody starting out as a property investor should read. First, Sam,
before you jump in, I annoy you when I jump in with these things.
Go on.
When things are in my brain, I think it's influential for people to understand. Property manager, you're mentioning some people that go it alone, and I've seen it before, even against my recommendations. It's a tax deduction for one, so it's less than what you think it is. But there is so many intricacies in it's a whole profession in itself. So thinking you can do a better job than a paid professional, I wouldn't suggest going down that path unless you're highly confident. Give it a go. Unfortunately, it's like that insurance thing is that you don't know the value of good professionals until it's too late. So
good point.
Jump in.
Thanks for jumping in. My next question is for you, Sam. What would you do differently if you were starting again? buying your first property
What would I do different?
as a beginner? What would you do?
Yeah. So, this is a great.
Is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes. Great question. This is obviously unprepared from that front, but I like my first property that I purchased. I was highly confident. In my 20s, I think it was. But anyway, it was. I was a valuer at the time, probably senior valuer. Done a property economics degree, worked in development, had a financial planning background, all this thing.
He knew his stuff.
I knew whatever I was. But then when it came down to the negotiation of it all, like I knew its value. All that went out the window because it was an emotional pressure cooker environment, and the agent even brought me into the office. Like we'd had verbal agreements. It was just me signing the contract. They asked me to come into the office, sign the contract, and right then and there, they're like, "Look," and they just threw another $10,000 on it.
Wow.
And it was like, "Look, this is what the owners come back." I know we've talked about agreements. It was around that. When the deal itself was a great deal, and for even the figure that we'd verbally agreed,
still good.
I was like, I'm driving to this office. I'm just like trying to sign this contract, and he was an experienced agent. He knew, and he's like, he asked for an extra $10,000 to get the deal done then and there, and I just signed it because I knew that it was like, for me in my analysis, I was still buying it below what I thought it was worth. But in a different environment, if I had more negotiation skills back then, I would have just been more firm, and I would have saved myself $10,000. So that's the experience. Like having that level of, I guess, negotiation experience wasn't there, and that's a key reason why I've been evolving that skill set for a number of years, and then working with people like Scott Agate, who's one of Australia's best negotiators.
Which still has to come on the pod, Scott. What are you doing?
Oh,
bloody hell, mate!
Yeah, if you are listening to this, he knows. I've got an idea for Scott. I want to run like an origin series around, because like the biggest thing I'm finding in this space is that people aren't knowing who they're getting in bed with, and I want you to understand the people behind the businesses to help you understand. Does that resonate with your morals and your values?
Yeah.
And then obviously the delivery side of it is something that
you have more faith and trust in if you trust their morals and values, for sure.
Yeah.
And if the people that you don't resonate with, it's fine. You just keep looking for people that you do resonate with.
Yeah. So there's my answer to your question.
And so I want to have 2 book recommendations, and I got one from a previous business partner of mine, which is The Debt Millionaire, to understand how valuable using debt is to grow your wealth with a good, stable asset. It's compared to many other investment classes, property is slower moving and more stable, and using debt to grow. And it talks about inflation, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, The Debt Millionaire by George Anton, really, really good. You've read that one as well, right?
Yeah, that actually was a book that Jared recommended to me, and he gave to me, and I read it, and like I was sold completely on property at that stage based on all my, I guess, education experience, my career, and then it even lightened it up even more to be like, wow, because there's always that debate: shares, property, which is your best, and with the power of leverage, and then taking into account the way the world's set up with like inflation and how you can actually use debt to work for you. It's really powerful, and that's why I guess we went down the property path as opposed to the shares.
Most people that come to me, well, a lot of people in my personal life, I've got a brand online and stuff, but a lot of people in my personal life come to me and sort of see, Jared's doing this, whole entrepreneur, living around different places. And
people are very interested, man. They're like,
they got no idea what I do.
What's Jared do? What's he do?
I have no idea.
It just seems like he just goes surfing and chats to Sam on a podcast.
Yeah, that's it.
Chats to business owners around the world.
That is all I do, though. That's literally, that's most of my time is sitting down and chatting to professionals and learning from them. On this podcast and my other podcast, yeah, and a lot of people, I mean, because people know me from school, and they're like, how does this person go off and just like not work much and do this? So they come up and ask me in my personal life, like, what is it you do? And I got some money. How should I, like, what should I do with it? And I'll either help them with, like, sometimes people will say, oh, can you help me buy a business? And then, depending on their situation, sometimes it's better for them to buy a property, not within my other business there. And yeah, I typically, for people that's best for property, I recommend the two books. George Anton, first, The Debt Millionaire, and the second one is Australian Property Finance by Conrad Bobilac, which we should get him on the podcast too.
Yeah, we were talking about that last time when this failed in this recording. But
Yes.
yeah, I'm keen.
Yeah. No, two really good books. So if you're a beginner starting out, read those two books and hit us up for coaching.
Yeah.
If you've got some cash deposit together, then we can start the ball moving for you and sort of build out a bit of a plan on what is the lifestyle that you want to live, and then how do we reverse engineer it to where you're at today to get there based on the cash that you have in your borrowing capacity.
Yeah, and putting you in contact with the right people in the industry is a big part. Are you going to ask me my book recommendation?
Yeah, what are your book?
I've got these books in the background.
Do you read them, or are they just there for show?
Just for show.
If you are, I got a few in there actually too.
They're probably from you, mate.
Yeah.
But if you are listening to us on the podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or your podcast player, we're also on YouTube, so check us out. Property Pals Australia.
What about your book recommendations?
Yeah, I'm just flexing the sales pitch.
I like my book there that I've misplaced for a long time is called, it's about network marketing, and I'm not in network marketing. It's called The Best Networker in the World.
Sorry, you're sitting there looking at the back of my head, my balding head.
Yeah, it's called The Best Networker in the World, which is really good. But do you have property books? Because, I've read Steve Polizzi's book.
Steve Polizzi's is going in the commercial. And there's definitely we're doing actually a commercial series with Steve, so keep an eye out for that. And also we'll get a code so you can get his book for free as well. But
yes,
I mean, my recommendation, I'm an old school kind of like my dad's into history and philosophy and all that. And I'm really enjoying that learning process for me at the moment. But there's a classic book that I would definitely recommend anyone reading, which is The Richest Man in Babylon. That's in the back there, and it's a small, easy to read book, but it's just the foundational principles of making your money work for you and how it can actually like change your life dramatically. So that's always that foundational one. For 101 beginners, look, you've saved that money, so you probably have a lot of the foundational knowledge as well, but it's really good to sort of reinforce that. And I like to keep books on my shelf there, and I've got other shelves around the house because I read them and then they're just constant reminders, and it's like I guess you can always go back and pick up a few things. And then my other property book, Bushy Martin's got The Freedom Formula.
Got that one.
And that's, he goes really in depth into, I like the way that his mindset is. It's not, like a lot of people come to the property industry, they're trying to get rich, and then there's people in the business.
They're selling education.
Yeah. Like other investors, like, I want to get rich quick. Be very careful of that. Property especially is not a get rich quick game. And most games that are fraught with danger, so be careful. But it's the philosophies of life mixed with wealth. So health, wealth, good relationships are those key pillars that I like to focus in on. So there's a couple of book recommendations, and we can, spit out a few as we go. But yeah.
Yeah, I read for a second time The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's a really good one. He's got another book that came out which is called The Same as Ever.
Kayla's actually so my wife's studying naturopathy,
Yeah.
And she's massive on health, and that's because of a past experience which led her to learn more about it. Same as Jared, he's big on health because of his,
Epstein-Barr virus.
Epstein-Barr.
Even before that, I started when I was 15 on my health journey. Hey.
Yeah, Jared's a celiac, so he can't eat gluten. And when he first started, it was crazy. I used to go around to his house as a kid, and everything had gluten in it. And you're like,
yeah, until
what do you do?
For the first 5 years, you knew me basically. I was actually remember this. I remember the story that you and Snowy came around. We got a mate called Snowy. Do you want to tell the story?
Was that when we set the alarm on?
Yeah.
No, you go for it. Oh, we broke in.
Yeah, you broke. So because I was tired all the time and had celiac disease, this is what Snowy says. He's like, oh, he's probably just sleeping. So you guys thought I was in the house, just like you were knocking on the door, and you thought it was just me there at home sleeping.
I ran the side too and knocked on the window.
Yeah, actually, and you guys knew where the spare key was.
Yeah.
So you went to the spare key spot, opened up the door, and the alarm went off. And then Mum had to come home and saw you guys standing there on the driveway.
Yeah, or Chubb security, or like
Yeah.
calling your mum, like someone at your house. So it was a bit rude on our end.
Classic. That's classic.
It was good times, kids.
Yeah. But you were saying about Kayla and her health journey.
Oh yeah. So she's been teaching me a lot about health, and that's why I'm a massive proponent of health, because without it we have nothing.
Yes.
Even the 101 is sort of a bit tangential on that front, but it's like, cool, you can earn as much, you can save as much, you can have the most money in the world, but if without your health, you're in your deathbed wanting to just be able to walk or to breathe properly or to see straight. Like there's so many more aspects on that front. But that's also why wealth is so important in your journey, is because it gives you money to have options in the event that something happens to your health.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's come round to the importance of understanding wealth and finance and your position, because one, school doesn't teach you anything. Life doesn't really, like, people don't really teach you about money. You have to go out and seek education from it. But she's come to The Psychology of Money, the book.
Oh, cool.
And she's reading that now, and I'm like,
Awesome.
I've already read that.
Yeah.
But, the underlying fundamentals of The Psychology of Money for me is, one, you need to learn the ways to save it.
Yeah.
So you don't spend more than you earn. Once you're saving money, then you've got to figure out, well, what do I do with this money that I'm saving to make it work for me, so I don't have to work for the money? And then, constantly reassessing your goals and making sure that your money is working for you, and the money that you have have options for, and you're living within your means.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next step is, like, once you know where that money needs to go, you've set up what I call the plumbing and the system for that money to go into those investment classes or asset classes. Once they're in there, reassessing regularly, depending on, it might be every 1, 2, 5, 10 years, whatever it is in between that, reassessing your opportunity cost with each of those assets too. And yeah, you bring up a really good point. Like, if you're going on an investment journey and a wealth creation journey, which is what you're trying to do, right? Wealth creation, whether you like it or not, it's the vehicle that you're going to be getting into that's going to get you to your lifestyle, right? I love wealth creation because of the game of it, but I know it's just a vehicle, because lifestyle is so much more important than just the strategy and the vehicle itself. But if you're getting into this vehicle and you're trying to get to this goal, more than likely, and you've got a partner, a wife, kids, maybe just a girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever it is, if you're going to build a lifestyle for the both of you, then you're both going to get in this wealth creation vehicle together. So it's worth having them at least understand a little bit about what you're doing, so they can support you on that journey. Because if they don't get it and are like, let's just go out to fancy dinners every single night.
Let's go to Europe.
Yeah, and just buy insane amount of holidays. And I get it. Like, you gotta live your life. Fancy dinners are great. Travel is like one of the best things ever, I believe. But at the same time, you need to balance it with your wealth creation too. And having a partner that supports you and the goals that you're creating for both of you guys, it's really important. So her reading that book is great. And I think, if your partners read, some of those books, or at least are open to hearing you about, some of the strategies you're learning, it's really, really good to have them on board the journey with you.
Yeah. Well, is that a wrap?
I think that's a wrap.
Propertypals.au. No, yeah, propertypals.au.
Yeah.
Check us out. Questions, leave comments below, all that sort of stuff. Everyone helps on about. It does help us grow.
Yeah, subscribe.
Subscribe now. But
feedback too, like we got some good feedback from Camo, our friend. Keep the feedback coming, guys. We're doing this for our friends, and you guys are our friends, so our pals, if we want to be corny. Our property pals.
But thanks for listening, and check out our website, and also don't be shy. As I said, there's no stupid questions, and more open to, I guess, questions, and bringing people on the pod to help them. Like the biggest thing that I'm trying to, in my mind, is learn, do, teach, share, grow. Jared's been a big philosopher of that for many years now, and he's helping me grow with my, I guess, property knowledge.
I mean, you're helping me grow with my property knowledge too.
But yeah, we're enjoying a good time. So thanks for listening, and see you on the next one.
See you guys.